Hi everybody! Welcome to the abbreviated version of #GetWoke, a beginner's guide to understanding privilege and becoming an ally. If you'd like to view the extended 19-minute version, it's posted under week 12 in our D2L shell. On most slides here in the PowerPoint, you'll see that I have included prompts on the links that link to think, feel, and do. And it's my hope that the prompts of think, feel, and do will inspire you in your work toward anti-oppressive education and your commitment to participating in the creation of safer spaces and more socially just communities. The inspirations for this presentation came from my own feelings of inadequacy as an ally and a recognition of myself as someone who needed to work on my woke. I will define what woke means on the next slide, and we will look at ways to get us and keep us woke. But first, a quick explanation of the inspirations for this presentation as my social justice project. I consider myself a socially aware person, someone who is aware of my privilege as a white, cisgendered, able-bodied, working-class person. But I was faced with two situations that challenged my knowledge of myself as an ally. The first was a situation where I got angry and yelled at a woman who used a racial slur. I was so angry about the slur that I spoke above the other woman who was in the conversation and who was of the race who had been verbally attacked. The woman who was subjected to the racist language ended up educating the first woman about why the term was offensive, which led the first woman to learning something about race, racism, and the power of words. All this happened while I fumed around, frustrated and righteous. When I was able to debrief the situation with another friend, I realized that my anger at isms that I encounter out in the world, in this case racism, come from a privileged perspective. I do not react in anger when I'm faced with my own oppression. Anger feels like a justified and powerful reaction in those situations where I'm confronted with oppression and discrimination that is not directed at me, and it feels unsafe and dangerous when it boils up in me when the discrimination is directed at me. If social change and education are my goals, anger is something that I'm going to have to learn to set aside or learn to use more effectively. What I am trying to figure out by doing this presentation, by being in this course and in my life generally, is how to be a better ally. Better so that when I'm in a situation again confronted with an ism that is not directed at me, like racism or ableism, I am not leaving the person I am wanting to be an ally for left to do all the educating because my own privilege has allowed me to be too angry to deal. When I'm in situations where I'm being targeted, I would like my allies to stand up and around me. This situation was still circling in my head when a dear friend who is a social justice warrior and incredibly impactful educator and facilitator on issues of racism and its links to intergenerational trauma posted a Facebook status that said, "You can't just self-appoint yourself as an ally. You've got to earn that title. You've got to be doing the work. You have to be aware of your privilege. #GetWoke." So there it was, the truth. I needed to do some work. #woke is a slang term that's found mostly on social media, and it's not a term that I could find in the literature. But it does speak to the exact things that we have been learning in this course on anti-oppressive education and to the larger topics of creating safer and more socially just communities. Bustle is an online magazine, and according to one of its writers, Maddie Foley, woke can be defined as a way of describing an informed, questioning, self-educating individual. That's what I strive to be, and hope to inspire others to become as well. In another online article tracing the use of the term woke from a 2008 song by Erykah Badu through its years in the Black Lives Matter movement to its current place on MTV's slang list of 2016, Charles Pullman Moore says that in the years 2011 to 2013, woke was used as a reminder to Black people about remaining vigilant about social issues and being aware of what was happening in the community. The fact that woke is essentially a social media term is not to say that there are not connections to the academic discussion of privilege, oppression, and being an ally that exists in the scholarly literature. In fact, in her paper entitled Unlearning Privilege and Becoming an Ally, Dr. Abby L. Ferber says that because the work of scholars discussing issues like being an ally is meant for and in the pursuit of social change, she would like to see more opportunities to explore the intersections of personal and professional. I hope that in these next minutes I might shine a quick light on how the concepts that we are learning here together can be adapted to create more personal and accessible dialogue within our families, with our colleagues, and in our communities. For the purpose of this presentation, I will use the word woke to describe the action of being awake and aware of our surroundings. A woke person is one who is able to think critically about privilege and also use their awareness to move themselves or others toward positive social change. I have purposely chosen a concept that is often discussed by lay people in the community and tried to find support in the literature. The ability to bring concepts like anti-oppressive practices into a presentation that could easily be adapted for my high school leadership students is an important mix for me of research and real life. As we've all been learning about privilege and oppression, sometimes the topic of fear and guilt gets introduced. Talking about privilege and oppression can be very uncomfortable. In her paper, Unlearning Privilege and Becoming an Ally, Dr. Ferber says the feeling of being uncomfortable is a sign that we are learning. If we are in the dominant group, we might feel guilt about what has happened, is happening, and will continue to happen to people in the oppressed group. However, an article in Women of Higher Education in 2006 warns that if we allow our guilty feelings to shut us down, the shutting down will lead to complacency and then our continued participation in oppression. If we are in the target group, we may feel like any conversation and interaction will only lead to a situation where our experiences will be dismissed as evidence of our individual shortcomings, or we will be accused of making up the discrimination or oppression in our minds. In either case, we may not see a way that we as one individual person can make change. As a member of the oppressing group, how do we make amends for harm done or stop harm from continuing? Or if we are in the target group, how do we address the oppression, even in a conversation, without putting ourselves in harm's way? How do we address oppression without hurt, being threatened, or even killed? Talking about oppression and privilege can cause conflicting feelings as well. So we might try and ignore or distance ourselves from all the discomfort. We might get defensive and engage in actions of what Anne Bishop calls competitive oppressions. All of these are attempts to relieve ourselves of the discomfort. As Amanda Hess says in her New York Magazine article, there's no script for taking responsibility for advantages that we never asked for and that we can't actually revoke. Working without a script can be very scary. For the purposes of today's presentation, I'd like to touch also quickly on the idea of colorblindness, otherwise known as the middle frog in the last slide. He's the frog that says, "Difference? What difference? We're all the same." To claim or to actually experience colorblindness might feel great. Recently, there was a well-circulated news story where a white boy got the same haircut as his black friend, so that they could fool their teacher, because then they would look like identical twins. The discussion of these 5-year-old boys in the popular media implies that colorblindness is something we should strive for. However, as those boys continue to grow up, it will be hard to understand the reasons that the black twin is far more likely to spend time incarcerated, be denied a loan or a mortgage, or to be underpaid compared to his white twin. If no one thinks their race makes a difference between them, people, even the boys themselves, might begin to believe that the eventual differences in their lives are due to some inherent difference in the boy's character or intelligence, rather than structural and institutional racism that is the actual cause. Colorblindness is the opposite of acknowledging privilege. Colorblindness is like sleepwalking. And walking around asleep is not very safe. Allies are important, perhaps even essential for social change. Allies can help move ideas and policies and practices along. Where would the women's suffrage movement have ended up without those male allies who supported and granted women the right to vote? Allies see the issues along with the target group. They are at the same time holding space as a member of the us and as a member of the them groups. In the movement toward equality, allies have an important position to connection with others in the oppressor group who can help move change along. As Robert Smith says in his article entitled The Importance of Allies, allies provide moral, political, social, and intellectual support to the effort. Why we need to be allies is equally important. In all of the research and discussion, whether from scholars or from YouTubers, it's almost unanimous. Most can see that no oppressed group will become less oppressed by oppressing another. In order to make strides in our work to end our own oppressions, we do well by supporting the work and advances toward equality by other oppressed groups. In the interest of doing a lot more listening, I went on an internet search and found a short video about being a great ally. There's a link here, and the actual video is embedded in the extended version of this presentation. Francesca is a pretty famous YouTuber who speaks about race and racism in her videos. The 5 points she makes are supported in the scholarly literature as well. Number 1, understand your privilege. Number 2, listen and do your homework. Number 3, speak up, but not over. Number 4, you'll make mistakes, apologize when you do. And number 5, ally is a verb. I know that we've all come to love and see the advantages to taking quizzes to keep ourselves on track with our learning. And getting 100% on a quiz feels amazing. This quiz would be no exception. This quiz, there's a link here that will take you to a 100-question BuzzFeed quiz on privilege. Please consider taking it later if you've not done so already. I read and answer quite quickly, and it took me about 5 minutes to do this quiz. Near the end of this PowerPoint, there is also a slide called the cutting room floor, and there's a link to a YouTube video of a group of people who take the quiz. I found that video to be quite impactful, and perhaps you will as well. If you feel uncomfortable after taking the quiz, remember that feeling uncomfortable is a part of learning, and a few more people in the world feeling uncomfortable about unexamined privilege or unexamined oppression might be exactly what we need to start to change some things. There's also a link on the cutting room floor to the International Disability and Human Rights Network PDF of Anne Bishop's 18 points for becoming an ally from her book entitled Becoming an Ally. Anne points out that we all have privilege somewhere, and that we can start our examination of privilege from that place. Anne reminds us that our privilege does not make us bad people, and also reminds us that by making a list of our privilege and helping others to see what it is and how it works, helps to uncover the invisibility of privilege and a move toward becoming an effective ally. If you're still not sold on quizzes, or BuzzFeed quizzes in particular, you might want to use this image as an inspiration. Maybe you could make power flowers with your students. This is an adaptation of Rick Arnold and Bev Burke's Power Flower. The adaptation is by a former student of Dr. Callahan's, whose name is Caitlin Campbell. There's also a power flower image in Anne Bishop's book that includes some other categories on the petals. Ally is a noun and a verb. Being able to say, I am an ally, or in slang terms, being able to say, I am woke, requires that I recognize what is going on in my community, that I see not only what is happening to me, but to others. It requires that I recognize my privilege. Once I'm aware of oppression, I cannot unknow that it is there, and that it is affecting people in my community. Some might say that it only affects people who are being oppressed. I disagree. If there is an oppression and discrimination going on, as it is, it affects us all, although some benefit from it and others do not. We are all swimming in the same water. If there is poison in the water, it's only a matter of time before it gets to everyone. The process of becoming an ally is a journey, done much like the process of living. As the saying goes, if you're not living, you're dying. Or in this case, if you're not getting woke, you're on the snooze button. And hopefully we can only do that for so long. Wake up, rise and shine. You're a beautiful ally. Here's some things that we didn't have time for, some cool links that wouldn't fit in the 15 minutes. So please take some time to have a look at those. Stay woke.